I am here with Vivek Saran, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for Belle Tires. Welcome, Vivek.
Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So I know you've been at Belle Tires for around 4 years now, and you spent many years on the agency side before that. So I'm wondering if you could share with us your path, your career path, and also tell us more about Belle Tires.
Sure, absolutely. It's funny. I am an accidental marketer. That's not what I went to school with. It was not my ambition. When you're young and you discover what you're good at and you got to make a living and pay the rent, that's kind of where you veer towards. And what I enjoyed about it was I was getting in at the time where I was learning a lot about behavioral psychology, learning a lot more about technology and the way consumer decision making was changing. So it was kind of fortunate that I got in the right place at the right time and had a passion and proclivity for it. So I joined Belle Tire about 4 years ago. It's about 100 years old, one of the largest regional tire and service retailers in the United States. And ironically, coincidentally, I'm not sure, they were my client before I joined them, and they'd never had a chief marketing officer, and I was helping them with strategic thinking, not just from an advertising perspective, but from an innovation perspective, from a pricing perspective, from a technology perspective, and how we were going to be proactive in maintaining our relationship with customers. And then after conversations, like the question came up, well, how would we find somebody like you to help work on, to be your collaborator? Like, would you ever consider me?
Right.
And it's been a great experience ever since. It's been a lot of fun. The work we're getting to do is exciting and fun. But that's what Belle Tire is. We've been doing it.
So give me a little bit of scale and size, like how many retail locations does Belle Tire have today? And are there other channels for you as well?
Correct. We have about 127 locations throughout all of Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, and we're soon entering other markets. We've actually been on one of the reasons I joined is we've been on a rapid greenfield growth dramatically for the last 5 years. In fact, we just opened up 20 units in the Indianapolis, central Indiana area in the last 24 months. And we're on the next chapter is going to be entering a new market that's contiguous to where we are. And we'll expect to open up 60 greenfield locations in the next 3 years.
Wow. So just from a career path standpoint, I think you graduated college and I think you may have gone to work for an agency and spent a long time on the agency side. So tell us just a little bit about that journey. I know you already mentioned sort of how you made the jump from the agency over.
Correct. So it's funny, my first career was in government. I actually worked on Capitol Hill for a couple of different members of Congress, and then I just didn't find the passion in doing it. And so I joined at that time, one of the oldest agencies in Kansas City, Harmon Smith, that was one of the legends of that advertising community. And from there, I joined VML for a while, and then went from a couple of other different agencies, and then landed and found my home at Mark USA. And what was fun about Mark USA, they've now changed their name to Nine Rooftops and organized a couple of different shops together with that. I had a wonderful opportunity to learn. And, we were in Pittsburgh, which, most people who don't know Pittsburgh aren't always sure what Pittsburgh's like, but it was this wonderful confluence
Amazing city
of, academia, business, and philanthropy that was working together. So I had this wonderful opportunity to learn from, people that were building IBM Watson and understanding about artificial intelligence before it is what it is today, understanding from behavioral economists that at Carnegie Mellon University, where I could bring them on to client work that we were doing. They would bring me into projects they were working on. Just had this wonderful, almost a free secondary degree that was being offered to me in the 12 years that I was able to spend in Pittsburgh. And that's really where my passion is. How do you combine, technology with behavioral science to drive business, whether that's through innovation or better consumer relations? And then how do you connect all those dots together to make it profitable and advantageous for a business?
Awesome. So I'm curious if there's a piece of advice you wish you'd gotten earlier in your career, or maybe advice you would give to somebody that's just starting out in their career, earlier in their career.
It's funny. I wish, listen more than you think. That you think, you always hear these people say, I think, I believe. If you think more and you listen more and you ground your arguments on and your hypotheses on facts and observations, that's the part that they never taught me in college. You leave with college and you have this arrogance that you know the world, and because you're young and you've got some experience with things, it's me search that you rely upon and what you think and what you believe. And you sometimes get closed-minded to listening to all the different opinions and all the different perspectives and all the different insights. And perhaps more importantly, to the consumer, listening to what they have to say. And listening doesn't necessarily mean just talking to them. Look at the data, look at the behavior, understand what's happening. So that's what the lesson I wish I had learned a lot earlier in my career was do a lot more listening and observation than talking, thinking, or believing.
I tell one of my kids that, there's the old saying, you have two ears and one mouth, use them proportionately.
You know what? They should have a degree in that because they teach the opposite at school sometimes.
Right. Well, so I believe that everybody has a superpower of some kind. So I'm curious what you think your superpower might be.
I wish it were invisibility, but that's not the superpower. Or maybe even just to be able to eat without gaining weight. That would be another superpower. I think I would probably actually enjoy even more.
Those are two scientific discoveries that might be able to fulfill your dream there.
We would, if we do, we'll have to patent it. You can maybe help me market it so we can become very wealthy off of that.
Absolutely.
It goes back to what I learned in school. I was fortunate enough to go to the University of Pennsylvania, and I had a degree of, it was political science with a specialty in constitutional theory, which everybody thinks has a lot to do with the United States Constitution, and it did. But what it really taught me to do was understand paradigms, structures, and how do you bring them to life. And that was my strength in the agency world, because the clients wanted us to find a solution. How do you describe that solution, map that solution out, and then bring it to life? And frankly, as a marketer on the client side now, that's what I'm tasked with doing. What is our go-to-market goals and objectives, and how do we build that? And how do we have the foresight to drive business today? Because marketers get fired if you don't drive the business today.
Right.
But the ability to structure it in a way that 3, 4, 5 years down the road, you've been evolving along the way so that your pivot and adaptation to changes in consumer behavior or advances in technology or competitive threats, you're able to do it more nimbly and more cost effectively because you've been planning that along the way. I don't know if it's a superpower, but that's really kind of the strength that has served me well. And that just comes with learning, understanding, patience, and going back to doing a lot more listening to people that are much, much smarter than I am.
Yep. Makes sense. I'm curious. So we're at this point in time emerging from a pandemic, wherever, the country here in the US is getting vaccinated and people are starting to go back to school and work and things like that. So other than that, I'm curious, what's the biggest challenge that you face as a marketer? Is it taking the data and using it, or is it something else?
It's a combination of things. One of the things I've enjoyed about Belle Tire is there's a lot of opportunity with the growth we're doing. More often than not, marketers are brought into an organization to fix something fundamental, a problem. Mm-hmm. And you know this, Joe, better than anybody else. There's no amount of marketing that's going to fix a fundamental business flaw.
There's no putting lipstick on a pig.
Exactly. It just can't happen. It's just that's a smoke and mirrors game. But with Belle Tire, the fundamentals are so sound. I mean, that's why they've been in business for 100 years, and we're growing. And now is about an opportunity. So yeah, the challenge of understanding, the evolving media landscape, monitoring it on a retail basis on a month by month basis and seeing these blips and being nimble enough to adapt, as well as technology adoption and implementation. The one challenge we have that's an interesting challenge that most of your audience and clients and connections probably don't have is we're a grudge purchase. And it's instead of hiding from that, we view it as an opportunity because there's always the exception. Every time I ask this question, there's always the exception. But Joe, if I said, congratulations, today you get to spend $1,500 on tires, My guess is that you can think of 1,500 other things you'd rather spend that money on than tires. And so that's our challenge. And it's not about hiding from it. It's not about pretending that
Yeah.
we can do something better than anybody else can do, but it's really understanding that emotional decision making, understanding that angst. Why is it a grudge? And then building a relationship. And I'm going to define relationship a little bit differently than everybody else. Building a relationship that's about it being a support and a resource that they can trust and give them peace of mind that when they do need us, we're going
Yeah.
to get them back on the road fast and affordably. And how do we demonstrate that between life cycles of anywhere from 2 to 5 years?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think there's maybe a whole category of products and services, to your point, that are grudge purchases that I think you could either, struggle to send a message that we're the best of the bad options that you have, or you could lean into that support system. I mean, it's not that dissimilar, I don't think, from maybe a mattress purchase. Often you purchase a mattress because you're having terrible night's sleep over time and you realize that there's something better. And it may be the same with a tire, that, you bad ride on your car and the tire can help improve the quality of that ride for you.
It's
Uh,
interesting, Joe. We borrowed from some innovation theories about jobs to be done, and we've adapted that into from a branding and marketing perspective.
mhm.
And the theory goes that consumers don't buy just products and services and brands; they're hiring them to do a job. And then the great part about Belle Tire is we already culturally understood that, though we may not have been able to articulate that. And from a tire tech, a very entry level person who's busting tires, putting them back on, all the way up to the CEO, what we understood is our job was they're not actually hiring us to put on the tires. They're hiring us to give them peace of mind that we're going to get them back on the road fast, affordably, and safely.
Hmm.
And if we do that, if all our marketing is around that, if all of our consumer experiences, whether they be digital, in store, or in between, if we are focused on that, getting them back on the road, giving them peace of mind and confidence, fast, safe, and affordably, then we're going to win more often than we lose. And that's really kind of what we center everything around, the way that we approach building that relationship, which doesn't mean I'm talking to you every single day, because the last
Yeah.
thing you want to hear from when you don't have a need on a grudge purchase is a company that's going to try to sell you a $1,500 set of tires.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but I like what you're saying is maybe evolving that relationship from a transactional, I need a set of tires, I'm going to go buy a set of tires and I'm done, to could be a relationship there where, maybe your content and all of your communication can be about enhancing a lifestyle, or, and maybe your customer cares more about travel, and and it's about being somewhere special, driving to see a relative, or to vacation or something like that.
And even one
um
step further than that, part of it is, Joe, now that you spent the $1,500, what is your expectation of the tire retailer that just sold you the $1,500? What do you think they want?
yeah.
Second set of tires, right? But what if we turn the paradigm and say, look, now that you spent $1,500, we don't want to see you any day sooner than you have to. So here's a whole bunch of free services that you can take advantage of to maximize your investment, so that
Hmm.
we don't see you any day sooner than we need to.
Right, right,
And
right.
then when we build that kind of relationship for you to get the most out of your investment, who do you start to trust? Who do you
Right.
start to have the ability to build a relationship, so that, unfortunately, in this category, I'd like to pretend that, like, if I build this conversation and trust that because we're a grudge, they'll love us with the first thing they think. That's not really what they're going to do. But if I can build a relationship where you're feeling like you can trust us to get the most out of your investment, and you're not going to be taken advantage of, that when you are in need, I'm likely to be higher on the consideration set. And as long as I do my job on pricing and at least be evenly matched with everybody else, I might have the advantage to win your business back again.
Yeah. Is there another industry, or a company that you aspirationally look to, as that you think is doing that particularly well?
It's Yes, and it's going to be in a little bit different way. And what's funny about our category, what I've had to learn, the biggest transition from the agency world, where most of us are working either on non-grudge B2B stuff or
Right.
oriented stuff, and most of my career was on the consumer side, was all the stuff I learned doesn't directly translate into our
Mm,
category. But the one brand I've really admired over the years is REI. They're a retailer.
yeah.
And what I loved about REI was they have a value system, and they really know who they are. And while it sounded revolutionary, what was it, 2, 3 years ago, when they said, we're
Get
not going to do
outdoors.
Black Friday, get
Yeah.
outdoors, enjoy the
Yeah.
world, and what a almost remarkably bold statement to make. But they knew who they were. They
Yeah.
knew who their customers were. And those customers weren't going to be coming in. The core customers weren't coming in anyway, but instead they were able to embrace that
Yeah.
understanding and make it into a more powerful brand that was more meaningful and more appealing to that core, and broaden the audience by just being holding true to who they are. So I've really respected them over the years. They do a lot of things with their people. It's not they feel very family oriented and feel very people oriented, and there's a lot of things that there are a lot of similarities to the company I work with at Belle Tire like that, and a lot of things that I can see how they've done it, and they've been very conscientious about the decisions they make, holding true to who they are as a company and core values. And I can see how that translates to our company. And frankly, I wish a lot of our clients at the time in my previous lifetime would have understood that and been as brave as they are today too.
Yeah. It's a really good point, though, understanding that people that really love REI aren't going for a Black Friday deal. That's just not their thing. And also, one thing I do also appreciate about REI is you're a member of almost like a family. Like they
Yes.
have a membership card and you become an owner, a shareholder, a member of the family, which it's why would you ever shop the competitor? You wouldn't do that to your family, would you?
Yeah.
And I love that. I think that's a really smart way to make you a part of it, versus just a customer.
Yes.
I appreciate that. So, okay, I'm going to shift to a couple of questions about you in terms of, I'm curious where you find inspiration, maybe even outside of the industry, or even where you find inspiration for your team. Is there a place that you go and
You
look
know
for
what's
inspiration?
funny? It's shifted. I started late in life having a family. So I have a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old going on about 18 at this point in time. Yeah. And where my inspiration, what I do outside, and it sounds corny, but it's really true. It's my children. And what's interesting is children are so honest. And when you start to really understand the psychological development of a child, the human behavior, way people think, and then you start to understand how to become a better parent. By the way, we're all trying to become better parents. None of us,
Yeah.
anybody who tells you they figured it out, I don't think I believe them.
All you have to do is shop at REI, Vivek. That's all you got
Exactly.
to do.
But when you start to do that, I learned that over those 5 years, I became a better manager. I became a better motivator. I became a better friend. I became a better marketer. Because all of a sudden I was able to be vulnerable to understand that I didn't know how to solve these things. And if I paid better attention to listening, and I understood the behavior a little bit better, and I started to better connect, that's where I got a lot of inspiration. It's where I love to spend my time. At the end of the day, Joe, when you and I are retired and hopefully enjoying something on a beach somewhere, the last thing we're going to worry about is the day-to-day stuff that we actually did. We'll be more talking about children and everything else. So that's my fulfillment. It's my inspiration. And it comes back to that family attitude, which is what I think the strength of Belle Tire has been. Belle Tire has not been successful for 100 years because of our slogan of the lowest tire price, period.
Right.
And because
right.
of our commitment. It's been our people.
Yeah.
Go back to the REI thing for an example. You go there and you meet the people that work there, and they've been there for 10, 15, 20 years at a retail establishment.
Yeah.
I just sent out a note. I love doing this every single day. I have a notes section where every day for one of our 3,000 plus employees, I thank them and congratulate them on their work anniversary. And 3 days ago, I sent out 3 emails on that day. One to somebody who had spent 29 years at Belle Tire.
Wow.
Another person who spent 24 years at Belle Tire, and somebody who spent 1 year at Belle Tire. And that's what I love at Belle Tire, is just that family feel.
Yeah.
And that's the inspiration. When you ask, what does our team get out of it? We're inspired every day to do our job, to do the best thing we can in marketing, to drive people in the stores, because we have 3,000 plus family members that we believe in, and we're serving the communities that we live within.
Absolutely. Well, that I think that people that don't believe that business is personal are mistaken.
Absolutely.
So what values do you try to demonstrate as a leader, or what values do you demand in somebody that you might consider for a hire for the marketing team at Belle Tires?
You know, there's 4 that I really talk about a lot with our team. And the first one, I think I probably touched on, which is like listening, and don't be arrogant.
Yeah.
That's the listening part of it.
Yeah.
The other one is we're all teachers and coaches. And I always remember the quote from John Wooden, that the difference between a coach and a dictator, I'm screwing up the quote, I apologize, is coaching is giving constructive criticism without getting people to feel angry about it, or to feel belittled by it, or to feel, whatever they feel. It's just, yeah, that's constructive. And I think that's what we all aspire on our team is, how do we constantly teach? I can learn from somebody that's just out of college or never went to college. I go to the stores all the time to hear from the folks that are on the front line that are dealing with customers, and listen and learn and help them, vice versa. The third one, and I got to be honest with you, I learned this at the agency, and I probably learned this because not all agencies work well. And sometimes agencies have creatures of ego that work there. They work everywhere.
Yeah.
But the third one is walk the walk. I can't expect people to follow me if they don't think I'm willing to do the work myself. If I can't demonstrate the values, if I don't live the values, if I don't live the work ethic, and part of that is also the life-work balance. If I can't walk the walk, then how do I expect anybody else to follow me? And I talk about that with the rest of the team, because sometimes the teammates are trying to get other departments to follow them. But if you're not walking the walk, they're not going to follow you.
Yeah.
And the last one is, how do you do this in a way without being the star or center of attention, but still yet inspiring or sparking inspiration? And, that's the important part. Like, true natural leaders are the ones people just follow. They don't have to be ordered. And that's usually because they're not necessarily the star. They don't force the attention towards them. They're just those, shining personalities that people gravitate towards.
Absolutely. So I want to shift gears for a minute. So setup exists to connect and empower marketers because we're better together. And that often means that we're connecting brands and agencies together. And so we sort of live in the space between, we're not an agency, we're not a brand, but we sort of live in that space in between. I'm curious about how you have worked with marketing agencies for the last 4 years since you've been on the client side. And are there certain things that you always would outsource external to your marketing organization? And are there certain other things that you would always keep in-house and never want to outsource them? So I'm curious how you work with agencies.
And we work with multiple agencies, from creative media, marketing automation, a lot of data, deep analytics groups. Some of them are big shops, and from publicly held agency companies to privately boutique to 10,000 people kind of agencies as well. What's interesting, I don't have a strong point of view on what I would farm out and what I would not farm out, because here's ultimately the test that I ask of everybody. When I'm judging somebody that is pitching my business, or that I'm seeking to work on my business, this is the question I'm asking. Can this company or this group of people be a strategic partner that can help us grow the business? And that's the important part, grow the business. Or are they just blank? Are they just a creative shop? Are they just an analytics shop? Are they just a media shop? Place whatever you want to put in there. The best relationships I have right now, and it varies by category, are those that are business partners, strategic business partners, that they use their craft and partner with us as an organization to move the business forward. So there are creative shops, and I love creative shops, but there are business partners that are creative shops.
Yeah.
Versus the creative shop that's just trying to get us a good idea or try to break through or do something clever.
Or win an award or something.
Or win an award or whatever it is.
Yeah. I love that. Well, it's interesting because I've asked this question of a number of CMOs, and it always feels like there, in my opinion, there are two reasons that a client hires an agency. One is a capacity issue. We just don't have enough arms and legs to do the marketing that we need to get done. And the other is a capability issue. We're not good at email marketing. We're not good at social. We're not good at content creation, whatever the thing is. And it feels like, what you're saying is that you're looking for an agency that keeps the business KPIs and results in mind first. And, it's creative for the purpose of moving the business, not for the purpose of creative kind of thing.
Correct.
Totally fair. Okay. So knowing that as marketers, we often work with non-marketing functions within the organization that don't always get us. How do you show the value of marketing to those in the organization that are not marketers by trade? How do you demonstrate to them that you're adding value?
It's fairly easy and straightforward, and it sounds like what I'm about to this. I hope this is both the most anticlimactic answer you'll ever get, but for some reason for marketers it seems the most controversial. If you can't demonstrate it in black and white numbers, then don't do it. Because we're not in business for awards. We're not in business for, people just love us or they prefer us. We're in business to make money. And so we have three very black and white objectives that everything else ladders into it. If it doesn't ladder into one of these three, we're not wasting our time. And when I have a conversation with the CEO, the president, the CFO, anybody else, the folks in the field, nobody can argue with what we're doing or what we're asking for. I'm lucky to work for an organization where I've never been told no once. I've been given more information that I didn't have before. I've been redirected. I've been done all that kind of stuff. And the reason why is I take it straight on. I don't want to waste your money. I don't want to waste our money. If it's not working, then let's not do it. So here are our objectives. Am I driving more people into the store? Am I getting more people into the website? Am I driving more profitable transactions than before? Let's look at same store. Let's look at year over year. Let's look at whatever but those are the three key metrics. And we think about ourselves not as a marketing team, but how we go to market. We've actually it's a little bit of a play on words because it's not just about one small piece, not about the messaging. It's about how we go to market. And I tell my team, I tell the board of directors every quarter, I tell everybody in the field when I go out in the field and do community meetings and talk to managers and go everywhere else. If our tactics, if our spend doesn't ladder into one of these three things, then I'm not going to waste my time. If I can't tangibly demonstrate, now I can pick a different KPI. I can talk about brand share. I can talk about NPS score. I can talk about a lot of things, but those all ladder into one of those three key business initiatives, and I can quantify it. And if it's not demonstrating success or moving the needle, then let's move on. Let's do a lot of experiments, fail fast, and double down on the things that work.
I love that. Well, okay. So speaking of that, is there a campaign or program, either in your 4 years at Belle Tire or even in your previous life on the agency side, that taught you a great deal because either it was a huge success or maybe it was a big flop and taught you a lesson that you really needed to learn?
And I hope I'm going to talk about what happened during the pandemic because I think it was one of my greatest learning lessons in a very successful story. when there's a recession or everything else, everybody got hurt and so did we. We were considered an essential business. We stayed open, though business shrank big time,
Right. People
like
weren't
everybody else.
traveling as much in their car. Right.
What we decided to do, and I learned this from a lot of other marketers over the years, we have a choice. We're definitely going to cut costs to get through the initial pain, but we could either hide and wait for the world to get back normal, or we could double down, drive even harder, invest even more, and steal market share when everything gets back normal. And that's what we chose as a business to do.
Hmm.
And that's what we chose as a marketing group to do. So we invested. The good news is we were already doing a lot of experience. We knew what we wanted to do. We put things on pause, but we weren't worrying about it. We knew that if we did it, we could recoup what we had lost and perhaps surpass that. And so we doubled down and we invested. We were brave. We challenged it. We spent 60 days beating ourselves up, figuring out what was the right plan to put in place. When would be the right optimal time to do it? How would we do it? How would we double down? And what I'm proud to say is that when we did do it, we increased market share in every single market that we were in, and we've not looked back. And what's funny is it comes back from learning from the old behavioral economics guys at CMU and all the teachers I had over the years, and you've seen the charts. The companies that invest during a recession or during a downturn always rebound faster, always get a leadership position. Now tell that but have the bravery to explain that, to your board and to ownership and leadership, and explain it quantitatively and inspire them to believe in it.
Yeah.
And by the way, let me be clear. I was part of the machine that did that.
Yeah.
Operations did it. The guys in the field did it. Finance did it. Everybody did it. And that was the greatest lesson, is you could be meek and wait, or you can be confident and thoughtful and succeed.
It's interesting. Obviously, adversity often births innovation. So I'm curious if there's a specific innovation that you saw that was born out of the adversity of the pandemic that you weren't expecting. Like, hey, we leaned into e-commerce. We leaned into something. I don't know if there's something that came out of it that you were not expecting.
What was interesting? We chose. I hope I'm answering your question, Joe, in this way. I would take a little bit different perspective on it. What we noticed is everybody, nobody knew what the hell they were doing in the very beginning of COVID. So I'm not criticizing anybody, but what consumers didn't want, and I think the mistake that a lot of brands did, is empathy became the theme for everybody. And after 60, 30, 90 days, we're all like, if I hear another ad that says we're in this with you,
soft piano music,
I'm going to throw up or,
right,
do whatever I need to do to get rid of this. And we chose not to do that. What we chose to do is demonstrate, not even say it, demonstrate how we were going to keep them safe, demonstrate how we were going to keep operations open, and explain why we were doing it that without saying what we were doing. Because here's the reality. At the end of the day, during the pandemic, remember back then if we can, you're not driving unless it was to get to the hospital, to get food, to do something essential, and then get back home. What would you do if your car didn't start? What would you do if you had a flat tire? What would you do if something broke down? So we knew what our job was. We went back to our core values. We knew what our job was. And we knew that let's not talk about it. Let's not show empathy. Let's demonstrate why we're doing what we're doing and how we're going to do it. I would say that was the innovation that surprised me. And the response by our communities was beyond what I thought. I was almost nervous that if we did that, maybe it was too bold and maybe we would get smacked. Like, we ran a sale during a quarantine period.
Right.
But the reason we had to run the sale was we knew people needed tires.
Yeah.
And at any time that you needed a tire at a cheaper rate, when you just lost your job or worried about your job or worried about the future, what better reason to do a sale?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was afraid we were going to enhance that, but we got good response from it.
Well, and to your point, build loyalty with the consumer to say we're not trying to gouge you or take advantage of you in some way. We're trying to get you back out on the road safely because we know that that's important, especially now.
Yes.
I love that. Okay, so I've got some fun questions that have nothing to do with marketing specifically. So the first is there a TV show or a movie or a book or a band that really inspires you? And why does it inspire you?
You know, it's funny, and I'm sure I'm going to get judged on this.
Can't wait to hear it.
You know, there's a show called Ted Lasso that's on Apple TV. And I will have to say that in the last year, it has provided me a great bit of inspiration, both from a business perspective, from a management perspective, and just from a personal perspective. And what I think is kind of interesting about it is, you know, Ted Lasso is almost this over the top good person. And it's so much so over the top and just genuine that's what's funny about it. And that's what's so refreshing about it. And part of it, when you really deep down, it's actually a really complex story when you deep down, when you dig into it and start to understand what the story that's going on and behind the scenes and everything else that's going on. But it's about a person who is genuinely going through adversity. And everybody around him is going through adversity. But he knows who he is. And he realizes what he wants to be. And while others may laugh at it, and while people may not believe in it, he holds true to it. And because he's so genuine, and because it's so true, and it's what we all aspire to be a good person, to do the right thing, it becomes infectious. And, you know, he wins by helping others be their best and not by tearing them down.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this other interesting thing is, and maybe it's a little naive, and maybe we need to be naive after the pandemic, and maybe the world would be a little bit better if we all thought this way, is that life is only a zero-sum game, and business is only a zero-sum game if we choose to make it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean we can't be competitive. It doesn't mean that we're not driven to be the best of who we are. It means that we can still win by doing it the right way and being good and thinking about how we can be good citizens of the world. So it's a little corny, you know, and it's probably more deep than, you know, the guys that created Ted Lasso wanted it to be. You know, that weirdly inspirational thing when you realize he's who we want to be.
Right. Well, I think there's something to the idea that, you know, we can be fulfilled as people by doing the thing that we do well as we can, versus trying to aspire to do something lofty. It doesn't have to be lofty. It could potentially be something that just inspires, you know, that being if you're a garbage collection person, can you be the best possible version of that? You know,
Joe, that's the privilege I get at Belle Tire. Remember that grudge moment?
Yeah.
Congratulations. You get to spend $1,500. You just hit a pothole. Your car won't start. Put whatever explicative you want in there or bodily action you want. Every day we get to turn that person's crummy day into a better day. Mm. And that's kind of why we do what we do at Belle Tire. And again, if we don't take advantage of people, we build trust, we hold true to our core value, we'll win more than we lose. Yeah,
that's great. Well, being the best possible version of yourself, that also can work for a company too. You know, aspire to make that $1,500 as painless as possible for the person. That's great.
Exactly.
That's great. Okay, so I'm curious where you find joy outside of work, not your family. So other than your family, is there something else that gives you joy outside of work?
You know, it's funny, at painting, I'm a horrible painter. I'm worse than President George Bush when it comes to painting, but there's just some kind of fun outlet to it. I find it relaxing. I find it calming. I love to travel when we could travel, and hopefully we'll be able to soon. Just seeing different cultures, different groups of people and everything else. So those are kind of the things that really kind of center me and keep me calm. and help me focus. And I find that when I don't do enough of that, I'm not very good in my personal or professional life.
Mhm.
And when I can find the time and force the time to do those things, I find that I'm more productive and more focused when I am at work and at home.
Now I'm sadly disappointed that your backdrop is a Belle Tire backdrop and not a painting, one of your paintings.
Well,
But it's
behind the
okay.
backdrop, it's there, but I'm embarrassed by the messiness, and I
Oh,
would never
no,
show the
no.
pictures.
Okay, so last question is just, is there something that I didn't ask you as part of this conversation that you wish that I had asked?
I think you covered it off. I really appreciate your time, and I think hopefully this helps agency partners you have and people that look at this to hopefully somebody gets a little bit of a nugget. And because I know that when I've watched some of the work that you've done in the past, I've always learned something from every interview that you've done.
Well, I appreciate that. And definitely this was a fascinating interview. And I know there were a bunch of nuggets in there. So I really appreciate the time. So Vivek Saran is the Chief Marketing Officer for Belle Tires. Thank you so much for the time.
Have a good one. Thank you so much.